use this. If a candidate does not use the full 2 minutes for the question that was asked, they can spend the rest of the time introducing a new topic, and at that point, the other candidate would have 1 minute to respond to the new topic. This opening statement of 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yep. I just want to say thank you to Steve Sept and the Stonington Community Center and Dave from the Westerly Sun for doing this. Ours is a beautiful place and state to live in, and I take full advantage of it with my husband to-be. We paddle, we bike, we hike, we ride our rescue. Oh, wait a second. I ride our rescue horses. I'm hopefully going to get him to ride our rescue horses too. Our corner of the state is amazingly beautiful. We have places like Barn Island and Hewitt Farm, but we do face serious challenges. And we in Hartford. Are you thinking of moving, going south? Well, you should know that on average your lifespan is 4 years longer if you stay in Connecticut. What about your children? Are you raising a child? The Annie Casey Foundation does a survey every year called Kids Count. It looks at the 50 states for the health, safety, education, and welfare of our children and families. Connecticut ranks number 5 in the country, I'm sorry. We're the only also able to get over $8 million in reimbursement for West Vine and Dean's Mill School. That's a direct result of my experience and time in the legislature. I was able to keep the North Stonington cut to a minimum and get $300,000 to the Emergency Services Building. Rest assured, you put these challenges together with the current divisive political atmosphere, and you need a representative with experience and a proven track record at working across the aisle. As I said, I'm chair of the Committee on Children. My bills routinely come out of the committee unanimously. I look forward to tonight's debate.
Make 2 minutes.
Is this one? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Why am I here? Having intimate information in regard to the budget, the state one, and haven't been in communication with the Council of Small Towns. It's a group of 115 towns that get together, and it's probably one of the most wonderful organizations because when we sit at the table, we don't know who is a Republican and a Democrat. And all of them together are in tune the same way, and every year we provide a legislative agenda. That legislative agenda is given to the legislative people. All are invited at an annual meeting. And right now, I think they're on a consistent basis. To the root of why I'm here, we have a perfect storm in Connecticut. Contrary to some of the figures that Diane may give you tonight, we're broke in Connecticut. And I mean severely that the challenge for the next coming budget, number 17, is coming up, will be whether or not, how bad do we get our funds cut from the state, and how much we have to make up locally, and how much more they'll cost you on the state level. It is a significant challenge, and it is not the town's fault. Stonington and North Stonington have their house in order, and we have made the hard decisions throughout the years, and this issue should be the state's, and they should absorb it.
Okay, thank you. All right, the first question, then we'll go to Diana for 2 minutes. We'll start with the broad topic of the budget, since everything seems to flow from the budget. Can you please discuss your thoughts about the state budget process, the deficit, and your ideas for reining in the deficit and allocating tax dollars in a different way? And in addition, are you in favor of retaining the state budget spending cap, which is pegged to an average personal income growth for the previous 5 years, or the rate of inflation, whichever is greater, and why or not?
That's quite a question. Anyway, my first response to that is I've pushed forever for the state of Connecticut to do GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. We're finally doing it. What we used to do is modify cash as flow accounting, which means that you count stuff when you feel like it. So so you can flip over the start of the fiscal year if you're in trouble. We are now doing generally accepted accounting principles. We have just started to do that in the last budget. So that is one way of truing up the budget. When you talk about the current deficit, yeah, we have very big issues on the deficit. But if you look at what I've done with the children's report card, I can tell you exactly, and you can go on the web and look at it and know what we're doing as far as restraint and seclusion for children, children's education, their reading level, abuse and neglect. And I have been able to cut the programs that aren't working and let the programs that are giving a return to our children and our families continue to go. As far as the deficit goes, the cap, excuse me, as far as the cap goes, we have never actually legislatively approved that cap, so that's why the cap tends to be a little bit malleable. I think in essence, going towards a cap is one way of doing it, but I really believe that the results-based accountability, where you ask each and every agency, how much did you do, how well did you do it, and is anyone better off? And if you can't answer those questions database, then you have an issue with us as far as whether your program's going to continue. And I have cut programs. I have cut $20 million from some programs. And I continue to use those parameters. And as I said, www.ctkidsreportcard.org, the only legislature in the country to have that so that you can track exactly what we're doing with your money and how well it is working.
Thank you. Nick, same question.
I got a chart, you can hardly see it. Okay, and what it basically shows is that the spending from 1970 to 2015, and then the second line has to do with the per capita income. And it shows that the spending has continued to go up, and that the income capability has actually stayed well below it. The state of Connecticut has 360 sources of what I call nuisance income. And as far as results-based accountability, the state of Connecticut uses political decision on the big items that really count, the ones that are in the hundreds of millions or billions. Okay? And if you talk to any one of the existing legislators and ask them, how much is the variance in the coming budget? I've heard everything from 900 million or higher. And to be able to understand how it's going to impact us is yet to be determined. In regard to a cap, I think there should be a cap, and we should honor that and stay under it. And we should look to do more cost efficiency and not the illusion of action. We continue to talk about how well we're doing, yet when we have somebody like Sikorsky, we have to bribe him to stay in the state for $220 million. Although we couldn't keep GE here, and we couldn't keep the main part of Pfizer here, and the financial condition is deplorable.
You all set on that one?
That's the end of the time, she says.
The next question goes, starts with you, Nick.
She has a rock she's gonna throw at me if I don't stop.
Let's make sure I don't.
It's a big rock.
The next question starts with you, Nick. Should you win in November, what are the three key issues you would bring to the legislature specific to Southeastern Connecticut?
Say that again.
If you're elected in November, what are three issues you would bring to the legislature specific to Southeastern Connecticut?
I want to be more generic in that. We've got to work on the budget, there's no doubt about that, and try not to impact the municipalities, because an impact to the municipality is just going to be a tax increase, and whether the state does it or we do it, it's a problem. Fix Connecticut's business climate, a long-term budget plan, and there has to be various tax reforms. There is a variety of subjects such as workers' compensation, unemployment, prevailing wage that are regressive and haven't been changed for years, and they scare employers to death. So that when people come and look at Connecticut and they look at the system of the unemployment and the workers' comp, they say, that's not a place I want to be. And having firsthand experienced those things that are uniformly different with how they apply them. And it's really disturbing and it's scary to employers. So the real important things would be the business climate, and then going through like 360 nuisance laws and say, do we really need them? Are they worth it? And these are the things that bother people, okay? And I want to basically keep it simple onto the budget. That's the most important part, to have reform there. And I don't want to impact the town by cutting ECS, and the Speaker of the House has said back away that said, everything's on the table this year. Now, the town of Stonington and North Stonington have kept our houses in order. We're not broke. The state is broke. I don't want their problem.
Thank you, Nick. The next question starts with Diana. What
Am
ideas?
I responding to this question? No, okay, so he just responded.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't give it to you.
No,
You're right. It'll take a minute. I'll give it to you.
okay. As I recall, the question was the three things that I would do, okay? The three things that I would do is, first of all, Nick alludes to the ECS. Well, the Supreme Court just made a decision in the state of Connecticut, which is going to have dire ramifications for our rural areas. And that decision is to really funnel the money more towards our cities because of the equity in the educational dollars. You're going to need somebody up in Hartford that understands that and is able to work with the people and make sure that our rural areas, particularly Stonington and North Stonington, don't get what just happened to them, which I was able to stop, an over $1 million cut to ECS to Stonington, which I got down to $186,000 and actually ended up plus $25,000 for the town of North Stonington in their municipal grant. That's what's coming. I know how to handle it, believe me. So those education dollars are going to be critical. Tourism. The governor zeroed out our regional tourism offices, and that's when I went after him. And I said, you can't do that. You do that, and you only cut the Amistad $18,000? No, not on my watch. We're paying back those Amistad small business owners, and that would be my one that is in concert with the tourism dollars. Amistad is going to be a tourism attraction to Mystic, to New London, and we don't have our own little regional tourism district because he zeroed them out. If you think I agree with the governor, think again. Small business. I just got money for Davis Standard, still a small business, under 500 employees. We don't have the huge employees. Yeah, we have ED, but that's Joe Courtney. That's federal, and we support him in everything that he's doing. But here in our district, we have small businesses, and we need to focus on the Small Business Express Fund. We need to focus on doing what we always say we do, which is the small business is the backbone of our economy. You have to believe that, and you have to make it happen. Working with Davis Standard, working with Kay Rotella and Rob Simmons and Mike Spellman on that grant was one of the best experiences ever.
Thank you. Okay, now the next question starts with you, Diana. What recommendations would you bring to the State House to address the state's pension dilemma, which has been cited as the key contributor to the deficit? In addition, there's another part to this as well. Are you familiar with Rhode Island's pension reform, considered a model for other states?
I actually wrote an op-ed on this particular subject called the manure pile. And I called it the manure pile because what happens, for those of you who have horses, if you don't manage your manure pile, it tends to take over the whole place. It's much more difficult to pile it up. And when we were kids, we practiced the let it go the whole place. That's what we've done with pensions in the state of Connecticut. And it's not just the last couple of years. It's been for a long time. And you increase the impact of it exponentially. There's no question about it. And we have a very real problem with those pensions. We have been addressing it incrementally, and we will continue to address it as best we can, given the other resources that we need in the other areas, our children and our families, our education system. We need to balance that and be sure that we continue to pay down that pension, because that, as I said, it enters an exponential growth. And I've written many op-eds about it and many ideas about how we should try to get out of it. As far as Rhode Island goes, Rhode Island's done an incredible job. Gina has been an incredible governor so far, but Rhode Island's a lot smaller than we are. And they have the opportunity to do some things that we don't have the opportunity to do in Connecticut. Our budget is probably twice their budget, at least. I haven't looked at theirs lately, but they don't have the issues that we have trying to get 186 people to agree, as well as every committee to agree. Now, I'm going to go just a little bit off because Mr. Mullane mentioned Sikorsky, and he said that we had to bribe them.
I have a question about that later. You want to discuss it later?
Well, can I go a little bit? Sikorsky, I'm an economist. That's what I do in my other life. And it's a bad deal to bribe people to stay, but the whole country does it. You know, that's just the way it is. That's how business is being done. And the actual corporations use it against us. So was I happy? No, I wasn't, and there's going to be another question, so I can stop.
Nick, same question. What ideas did you bring to the legislature to address the state's pension obligations? Are you familiar with the reform in Rhode Island on pension?
I'm familiar with Rhode Island, what I read in the paper, and I think the comment that Diana made was, you're not going to get 138 or 156 people to agree. And that's the shame of it, because something of that sort is necessary. Would I be willing to entertain it? Yes. Okay? And in regard to the Sikorsky, if we had our house in order and we're the best in New England, we wouldn't have to spend $220 million. And yes, a lot of people in the country do it. We're the gateway to New England, okay? Anybody that comes up past New York and New Jersey are coming up because they're looking, I want to be in New England. And Connecticut is no longer a premier state in regard to their financial house. We've had our bond rating downgraded, so that's costing us more, okay? And I'm of the opinion that we have to make some difficult choices on the state level and make commitments that we will put money in to the pensions and not steal it. It's like the DOT lockbox. I'm not in favor of that because the state of Connecticut has a habit of stealing from any fund or not funding it or just switching around and making things work for the year, which just adds more to the deficit. The chart clearly shows it. That's what's happened, is we have continued to not do the financially proper things and make the hard choices, okay? So I think I would be much more hardline. She's got the rock again.
I just,
mic closer, please.
pardon me?
Would you keep your mic closer, please?
I just wanted to get back to the pension for 1 second. We had maybe 30 seconds for each. One of the reforms in Rhode Island, I think one of the bigger impacts, was increasing the minimum retirement age for state workers. Diana, could you get behind that?
There's no question in my mind that I could get behind that. And I mean, there are other issues in Social Security that I could also get behind. And we're going to be pushed to do that. There is no question we're going to have to address this because the pension, the exponential growth, anyone that looks at the numbers realizes what that exponential growth does to us. That yes, absolutely.
Okay. And Nick, could you get behind that, increasing the minimum retirement age?
I have mixed emotions about that. You know, what I don't want to do is take an experienced employee and chase him out and lose all of that history and so forth. You know, the tribe, I have worked with many state employees, and I tell you, I am continually impressed how hard they work and how the senior people are so great in regard to their knowledge and remembering what happened. So I would be somewhat cautious on that. I wouldn't mind having a change in regard to the pension increments as you go along, okay? But I don't like the idea of chasing people out of the employment bracket.
Okay. I think this next question starts with Nick. The education ruling by Superior Court Judge Thomas McCousher, I think everyone's familiar with that. The decision gave the state 180 days to make major reforms in almost every area of education. Attorney General George Sept has repealed it, and saying the judge overstepped his bounds. Governor Malloy feels that if the legislature doesn't act, the schools could be run by a court order. Please discuss your reaction to the ruling and to the status of the education cost-sharing program now.
Thank you for that question. While the state government long has been increasing grants to poor systems, they ultimately have no formula that has to be followed, just politics. And grants have been adjusted by the General Assembly, by the Democratic leadership, by those votes to pass the state budget. There is no system, there is no formula, and how it works, we have finally got somebody who stood up. Whether it stands the appeal or not is yet to be seen. But out of this, I hope we can get some reform in regard to actually putting some laws together rather than using political decisions to come to the basis of who gets what. And the ECS is awful. The town of North Stonington has 775 students. Stonington has somewhere around 2,500. Stonington gets 1,900,000. North Stonington, 1/3 the student gets 2,900,000. What am I missing here? You in Stonington should be outraged that you're shorted $1 million. Again, there is no legitimate system. And if you look at the per capita income of Stonington and North Stonington, it's 81,000 versus 80,000. So, and then you get into the building part of it. Okay, Stonington's doing a project, they're getting 32%, and it was down as low as 25. North Stonington's doing a project, the rock. I'll finish that another time.
Diana, same question?
Could you just ask the question again, please?
Sure, regarding Judge McCousher's ruling in education.
I just want to be sure that's where we were going. Thank you. McCousher's ruling. First of all, to respond to Nick, the reason that North Stonington and Stonington are so different is there is an ECS formula, and there is a formula that you can look at, and a lot of it is based on free and reduced lunch. And those numbers really make the ECS grant jump one way or the other. So the North Stonington free and reduced lunch numbers are totally different than the Stonington free and reduced lunch numbers. When Nick says that he wants to get rid of this ECS, or he wants a fair formula, be careful what you wish for, because that is exactly what the Supreme Court case was about. McCousher has said that the funding in the state of Connecticut is skewed, that the rural areas get far too much, and that Hartford, New Haven, and Bridgeport don't. We have been in a formula where what we do is called hold harmless. They've done that since the 90s. What hold harmless means is we never cut you, and we've gotten used to that. So what they did in appropriations this time is they decided to abandon hold harmless, and they decided to actually use the formula. the formula that Nick says isn't there. There is a formula. And when they used that formula, it resulted in Stonington getting cut over $1 million. It also resulted in North Stonington getting a huge cut. I was able, because of my experience and because of my leadership position, to mitigate those cuts. But I would tell you that this is going to be a battle. And the Attorney General is appealing the decision. It's a Supreme Court decision. He's appealing the decision. And we'll see what he comes out with. In no way are we going to be doing that in 180 days. It's going to be under appeal, and heaven knows how long it will be under appeal. But I would refer you back to the Juan F. case, which is under my purview as chair of the Committee on Children. We are finally getting out of underneath that court order. We had a press conference talking about what we were doing there. And I'm going to stop.
Okay, next question starts with, next question starts with Diana. Diana, do you believe the state has a role in addressing the opioid addiction crisis and the related increase in heroin overdoses through the Department of Health, or do you prefer to see towns addressing this on their own?
I worked very hard with the chair of the public health. Matt Ritter is the House chair and Terry Giordano is the Senate chair. And the Children's Committee and the Public Health Committee worked very hard on looking at prescriptions for opioids and how long a child could have them for, and whether somebody had to be there when the child had the prescription signed. So we were able to do that on the state level. We were able to say there are some parameters, but I completely and totally believe that these are our children, and we need to focus too on our local level. I know that Mike Spellman and his brother Jim have been doing an incredible job, and down in New London, to shine a light. We need to come together as a community with this terrible opioid addiction. And you know, I have my own feelings about why kids are going that way, and one of them is because, remember when we were growing up, you had this great future. Everything was great, you had a great future, went to school, it was gonna be awesome, you had a job. Now kids go to school and they come out with a huge debt. Then what do? They have this debt, they have this payment, so everything does not look bright. It doesn't look rosy. They're thinking, I don't have a place to go. I don't have something that I can do. So I think that they're gravitating towards drugs. And maybe that's not the ultimate reason, but I sure feel that as the chair of the Committee on Children with what I see, that there are kids that don't have a direction, that are afraid, that they don't think they're going to be able to get a job. They're just going to have this giant debt when they kind of come out of college. So on the state level, we are able to set a framework, and we are working hard to set that framework. But it's your local level. It's everybody. It's every parent. It's every school. It's every grandma. It's every local government person. We have to have our eyes open. We have to figure out how we help our kids.
Say the question.
Regarding the opioid crisis and the increase in heroin overdose, should this be addressed on the state level, left up to the towns and cities?
It's everybody's responsibility. I'm gonna steal a phrase from Fred Griffin, okay? I had it hanging on my wall for years. It's easier to educate a child than it is to fix a broken man. If the family breaks down, we gotta give them help. The best thing you can do is have a strong family that's healthy financially and otherwise, so that they can help the child, mentor them, and keep them in school, and not make them focus, want them to focus, and have an objective to where they're going afterwards. For those that haven't got a goal, we have to help them see what's out there. I took my son to college, and there was a young fella who had graduated but had not gone on to college. And my son went to Dartmouth University of Massachusetts. On the way home, we come down I-90, 91, whatever it was. And every time we went by a place, I pointed to it and I said, do you know what kind of employment was in there? We passed sales. He says, a bunch of salesmen. I says, no. There's purchasing agents. there's stock, there's all kinds of things, there's accountants, there's all kinds of management. I says, sales is only one part of it. I says, understand, look at the businesses around Connecticut. Can you find one that suits you, one that likes you? I says, go do some investigation about who does what, where, and what kind of employment is in there. Like Electric Boat, there's everything from soup to nuts. I felt the rock again.
Nick, did you want to make a comment about whether the state should help fund some of these opioid, heroin programs or lead it to the towns?
I think the state should help in regard to the extra things, okay? But the local towns should, if I got another 2 minutes?
No, not really. I just want to bring it back to the question. So this one starts with you, Nick. This is on tourism. Does this area need an increase in tourism funding from the state? We have the casinos, and we have the boutiques, and we have the aquarium and the seaport complex. But what additional attractions could be added to get more people on the shoreline, for example? Water access and bike trails. This was a reader question.
That's my question. The first thing you shouldn't have done was cut the tourism fund. That had to be one of the most foolish things I'd ever seen. But I think marketing, okay, and I think as far as added attractions, we would look around to the countryside, the other parts, and see what else we can also draw in here. I also thought that maybe some of the large chains like LL Bean could come down into this area. They didn't choose it. I think they went to Cranston, Rhode Island. But I would look along and a combination of added commercial, not to compromise what we got, but added activities or to exploit them more, such as the offshore fishing and the boats that operate, the fishing charter boats that operate. And then, I hate to say it, the other thing that might be thought of is that there possibly could be more events like the Mystic Arts Festival and so forth. But along with that goes an awful impact to Stonington. And I often thought that, okay, North Stonington gets a casino impact. I think that Stonington should get an impact to help them because they spend an awful lot of extra time or hours on police and EMS and so forth. I don't think they're compensated the way they should. And yes, I do feel that there's room for expansion. I don't think that the tourism fund should have been cut. I think it was originally there was an added 2 or 3% on the hotel tax to fund that. Once it got it didn't go in a lockbox, so they stole it. Okay, poor management and judgment, because I believe there's a 3-to-1 gain to every dollar spent on tourism. It's foolish to cut it. And Stonington, Mystic and Groton do a phenomenal job on how they administer it and control it and police it.
Thank you. Diana, same question.
I think everybody here probably knows that I was one of the ones that really fought the governor when they zeroed out those funds. Senator Paul Formica and I are the co-chairs of the Tourism Caucus in the General Assembly. And we brought in Ben Barnes, who's the head of the Office of Management and Budget. And we said, you shouldn't be doing this. We said, we have our local tourism, each area has a unique thing that they can bring, and that the local tourism offices are the ones that are able to sell that. And Ben said to us, well, no. We still have the huge state marketing effort, which is, Connecticut is still revolutionary. I said, well, that's fine and dandy. And then, because I'm the data person, they're trying to show me data from across the country that says, it's these big marketing things that they do statewide that work. Well, that might get you into the state, but what gets you down to Mystic? What gets you here? And that's why I fought him really hard on this one. And that's when I outed him on the Amistad. And I'm gonna get that Amistad, those people paid. You wait and see. I will get that done. talk about what development could we do here? Now I'm going to tell something out of school. One of my favorite places to go is the Cottrell Brewery, because we go walking on Barn Island, and then we go to the Cottrell Brewery, and we get the tasting, and it's awesome. And then you have Gray Sale, and you have beer, whatever it is, down in Melvinville. We should be promoting that. You know, that kind of thing is wonderful. How about our wineries? I mean, the wineries, like, go out to John Edwards sometimes. They're rocking. He's got stuff going on. It's amazing. So those are the kinds of things you want to make, you want to enhance what North Stonington and Stonington are. You want to say, this is why our place is beautiful, and this is what you want to do here. Down in town, North Stonington, they're now doing a small craft brewery. I got that in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now you can both get back to Sikorsky. This one starts with Diana. Some people call the kind of deal that Sikorsky just got yesterday, $220 million incentive deal, corporate welfare. They say the business climate in the state is so bad that this is the only way the state can keep large businesses. What are your thoughts on these kinds of incentives?
Oh, well, I got up on the floor of the House last night when we did the Sikorsky deal, and I talked about what exactly are we doing. I am an economist, and an economist will tell you it's a race to the bottom, and they say you shouldn't do this. Well, that's fine and dandy, but if you're the one that decides you're not doing it, and the other 49 states are doing it, then you're in trouble, and that's what we're faced with. When Sikorsky says they're leaving, or some other firm says they're leaving, we jump. What I have said is, look at Germany, look at Japan. They just admit that it's a public-private partnership, that the government and the business are going to work together. So if that's what we're doing, why don't we just admit it and do it? Because what we have here in the multiplier effect on the Sikorsky deal there with the helicopter, there are all kinds of suppliers. The multiplier effect is very large, and the way that that deal was written, it was written to keep the suppliers in Connecticut, to make sure that the jobs stay in Connecticut, and any suppliers that Sikorsky is using are Connecticut suppliers, insofar as we can do that, and maybe we can increase those small businesses to supply Sikorsky. But I also said on the floor of the House, if we have $220 million to keep Sikorsky in the state of Connecticut, then we have money to spend to pay off the small business owners that got stiffed when I was the one who blew the whistle at Amistad America. It went into receivership. Guess who got paid off? The state, because they're the first receiver. And then the state gave the new Amistad committee money to buy the Amistad. I'm just telling you like it is. So I was all over that. I was the one that got them into receivership. I was the one that said you can't do this. I took a look at their papers. And bless the New London Day, they're the first ones that blew the whistle on this. And when I saw it, I was like, whoa, they're going to get paid off, guys, those small businesses.
Okay, Nick, the same question about the Sikorsky $220 million incentive to stay here, to go to helicopters. And your thoughts on the concepts of those kinds of deals?
Without a doubt, I don't want to lose Sikorsky. They've been part of Connecticut for years. I mentioned earlier, if we have reforms in regard to unemployment, workers' comp, and the other nuisance taxes, and how difficult it is for people to do business in Connecticut, maybe it wouldn't have been $220 million. Maybe it would have been 120. Maybe it would have been 50 million. I'm still of the opinion that we have to get our house in order, and we can't say that just because everybody else does it, we'll do it. A quick note on the Amistad. It never should have happened in the first place in regard to the fiasco of the thing getting out of control, the money totally being wasted and overspent. The end. I get credit.
Okay. Okay, another reader question. This starts with you, Nick. What can be done to make it possible for more of today's young workers to live here and secure up-to-date affordable housing? How can we encourage household formation and the restocking of the younger population?
You touch my soft spot. My 3 children, born in Westerly, raised in North Stonington for all their life, graduated from Welland. One's in New York City, one's in Washington, D.C., and one's in Westerly by their own choice. These are 3 professional people who are very successful in their work, okay? They all got a college education and have been very successful and in demand in their individual employment. I think in Connecticut, what we have to do is, 1, make more employment available, and then the next part is affordable housing. There's a lot of affordable housing available right now because I basically have a condo that my daughter was living in up until 6 months ago when she moved to Westerly. And it is now on the market for sale, and so I'm a little familiar. I do have other real estate that my wife was left in Groton, and there's 2 apartments in that, which we don't lease. We're just trying to preserve the 1900 house. And I think it's going to key on employment, reasonable employment that's available, and steady and secure, and affordable housing, and apartments, and so forth. We're trying very hard in North Stonington to do that. We're having difficulties. There's not a lot of people that want to build them in North Stonington because they end up costing over $200,000, and $200, $250, $275. That's not affordable to a lot of people.
That goes to you now, on keeping young people here. And keeping, repeat the question?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were still going. I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, he was finished.
Well, first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to Lisa Tepler Bates because we became the first state in the country to end veterans homelessness, Connecticut. And she has done an amazing job. As far as affordable housing in Connecticut, we have a problem. And that's because 2 people earning a minimum wage cannot really afford housing that's not more than 30% of their income. So 2 people working, earning minimum wage, cannot do 30% of their income and have a home. It has to be more than 30%. Then what do they do about meds? What do they do about the kids? What do they do about the rest of their budget? So one of the things we need to look at, and we're really good in the state of Connecticut, but there's no reason not to continue to look at the minimum wage. And I'm an economist, and I can tell you that raising the minimum wage doesn't mean that people lose their jobs. Believe me. And we could discuss that forever. But raising the minimum wage is something that I think we need to seriously look at because of the fact that 2 people working can't afford a place to work. Another thing is this 8-30G. That's our affordable housing statute. We need to open that up. And we needed to say that we can use different kinds of housing as affordable housing. Apartments, mother-in-law, those kinds of things, which don't count as affordable housing right now. And that makes for a very real problem when we're trying to put people into affordable housing. I would also say, with people leaving the state, and I'm not sure whether Nick has read the Hartford Courant, and Dan Haar, who's their business editor, they're not. The 30 to 40-year-olds are coming back because of the high-tech businesses we have and the clusters that we have. My own son, who is an attorney at Cadwalader, Wickensham, and Taft in Washington, D.C., is returning to Connecticut. So I really think that some of the doomsday perspective on Connecticut is not well taken.
I just wanted to follow up on that. Maybe we can give each one a minute. On affordable housing specifically, can you comment on the mandate that the states are under There seems to be affordable housing in every town. It just doesn't suit the mandate. Do you have
Yeah.
some thoughts on changing that somehow?
Yeah, well, that's 8-30G. And every time you try to open that section of the law, it turns into a huge fight on the floor. So if we can open that section, and I think we're getting closer and closer to doing that.
And is that allowing existing homes to be considered?
No, what it does is it
Affordable.
restricts it. And it makes it, everybody has to have 10% affordable housing,
Right.
but it defines affordable housing as not an apartment or not a mother-in-law issue. And that's what we're trying to change.
Dick, do you have any thoughts on the affordable housing, the mandate?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. For another minute.
In North Stonington, we have an entire development, which is Cedar Ridge. Every one of those homes fall into the affordable housing category, but they're not deed restricted. And that's one of the big issues. A lot of people do not want to deed restrict their house, i.e. that you are required to have it for X amount of years, and if you sell it and if you make money, there's actually a penalty. Now, besides that group of 120 homes, another development, i.e. the Meadowwood, is the same thing. This is a get-even law with the big cities who wanted to push out the affordable housing people to places like ours, North Stonington. North Stonington, for a lot of working people, is not suited. You have to have a car. The mileage is a wear and tear, et cetera and so forth. So, affordable housing is important. The law's got to be revised. It's outdated. It actually works against the system.
Okay, this next one starts with you, Diane. This is an interesting question, submitted also. Would you push for an expansion of lanes on I-95 between Rhode Island and the Connecticut River? Or do you think retaining the status quo is somehow a way to keep your lid on development? I thought that was an interesting question.
Okay. I am not in favor of increasing the lanes. I think what we need to do is we need to start to look more at multimodal transportation. We've got to think about our trains, we've got to think about ways to get places that don't make I-95 a giant runway between Boston and Washington, D.C. The accidents that we're having, the high speeds, the truck routes, the idea of adding an extra lane, and we'd have to exercise eminent domain. We would be taking all kinds of properties. The fight would be absurd and ridiculous, and the time to do it, and the lanes that would be shut down while we were trying to do it. There are traffic experts that know this area much better than I do, but I am a very big proponent of the multimodal idea. There's nothing more fun, as far as I'm concerned, than taking the train. Look what Europe has done with their transportation system there. I mean, I happen to be going over to Ireland to address the Irish Parliament on what I do with the Children's Report Card. And, we land in Dublin, we don't need a car. I mean, we're ending up in Belfast addressing the Parliament, but they have the trains and things that go every place. And we need to start to think about that in this country. Not only that, when you're on a train, you chat with people. You get to know people. You get to know what the country is about. You get to know stuff. So, why do we want to have, 25 lanes on I-95 so we can all race from Boston to Washington? No, I'm not in favor of trying to do that.
Okay.
Which parameters did you talk about?
From the Rhode Island border to the Connecticut River.
The one intersection we have to fix is East Line. There's been too many death-related accidents in that area. Do I think we need more lanes? I don't think we should. And if I was Connecticut, I'd say, I'm gonna fix Fairfield County. That's a mess down there, and that's where the money should be spent. And I'm also of the opinion, people don't agree with this, we have reduced the staff of the state police. We are now reactive instead of proactive. And I think that they should reinstate them, because I know there's one Dodge out there that has one of the highest arrest rates, and we ought to put another dozen of them out there, and they'll pay for themselves fivefold. So I think policing can solve some of the problem. The troopy is not staffed the way it should, and it's too big an area, but I do believe East Lyme should be fixed. But if we're going to spend money on 995, there's other things that can benefit Connecticut much better. That's my feeling.
Okay, thank you. This question starts with you, Nick. It's about marijuana. Connecticut is one of 25 states that allows medical marijuana use. There are only 4 that allow recreational marijuana use. Do you think Connecticut should allow recreational marijuana use?
I think the medical marijuana has a use, recreational, I don't support it, period.
Okay, thank you. Diana, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. You know, when you start to understand the benefits of medical marijuana, we had kids that were having seizures, and it was marijuana that helped them get through those seizures. We had cancer patients, and the only relief that they would ever get was from marijuana. So we started to take the journey, and the journey started with medical marijuana. As far as recreational marijuana, I'm not sure. I mean, we have alcohol, and there's some pretty annoying drunk people who say some pretty nasty things and end up killing people on our roads. So, but we don't outlaw alcohol. People that are smoking marijuana are usually pretty happy, the ones I've run into anyway. They eat a lot, but they're usually pretty happy. So I don't know what that trajectory is going to be, but I do know that we thought medical marijuana was ridiculous, that we weren't going to do that it was a terrible, terrible drug. And I think if you look at the history of marijuana, you will find out that it wasn't because we thought it was a gateway drug that we started to say you couldn't have it. It was for other reasons. But my point is, we evolve. We find out things. So am I open to learning? Yes. I'm pretty much open to learning everything. But I do know what has happened with medical marijuana, and I know how amazing the results have been for that. So, do I enjoy a cocktail every so often? Yeah, I do. But does that make it wrong? I don't think so. So, if somebody enjoys having marijuana every so often, I don't know if that's something we're going to go to. But I think that, you know, it's an issue in progress. That's all I can say. I'm open to listening and seeing whether we want to go there or we don't want to go there. And of course, I would say if we do go there, we tax the hell out of it. So there you go.
Okay, let's restart there. That's nice. Back to business, and this, I believe, starts with you, Nick. What can Connecticut do to help promote small business and improve the business atmosphere in general?
I think the biggest problem with anybody starting a business is the regulations. I know Stonington used to be called Zoningville, and we had a transition where we found out we were chasing away a lot of good people, and we ended up with a new set of planning and zoning people that really was aggressive, and they responded to the plan conservation and development. I think that the business climate in Connecticut is poor, and I'm going to mention it again. The unemployment insurance, the workers' comp, and other nuisance regulations like that, they are necessary, but they greatly need reform. Okay, scare people from starting a business and having any employees. I had an employee that come in and work 4 hours one day and then left, and we didn't like it, the circumstances, and I get a bill for $1 for workers' comp. I attacked the commissioner and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "It is what it is, that's the rule, we just apply it." Okay? I think that the business laws are difficult to deal with. Everybody talks about them, but they don't do anything about it. That's what I'm continually hearing from the incumbent this year. Okay, there's problems, but we just can't resolve them or get them through. It's about time we even up the legislature and start taking the hard questions and attacking them and do something rather than talking about it, okay? And that's a consistent problem in this legislature. And I have, the only reason I'm getting involved this year is because I don't want Stonington and North Stonington to end up with a big fat bill of less aid because the state is broke. I'm tired of hearing that the state, you know, it's a wonderful place to live because of the towns, not the state of Connecticut.
Nick, as a follow-up, are there any regulations that you're aware of that seem overburdensome? That you would, if you were elected, you would say, let's get rid of this?
I think the ones in regard to hiring people and their commitment to them is one aspect. That's the workers' unemployment and compensation. The other one I'd say is the liquor issue is disastrous. I mean, who in here buys the major liquor in Connecticut? You go to Rhode Island. You know, and I'm getting tired of seeing a state car drive down 78 and go to Dunn's Corner and then go into the liquor store to get the discount, okay?
So you would want to reduce the liquor tax? You would want to reduce the liquor tax?
I think we ought to go back to the free market and just, I think a limitation of how many there is in a town is so far so okay, but I think the rule they have in regard to it's fixed pricing by the state of Connecticut, that's not good business, okay? And it's costing the people more, and it's more difficult for the workers also, the owners.
Does he have more time?
That was 60 seconds.
Oh.
I don't know what you wanted.
Yeah, that was a follow-up, so we're good with that. Diana, same question to you.
Sure.
I think it was, could be
yeah,
done to improve the small business.
Right, I remember. I guess Nick is not aware that I actually passed legislation that any new regulations coming out on small business are checked for their impact on small business. These are new regulations, and I passed this 5 years ago. So if you're trying to put a new regulation on small business, it has to be checked. And if it does have an impact, there are 4 or 5 ways to mitigate that impact. Small businesses don't have the staffs that large corporations have. So if it's in paperwork that puts them under, then we eliminate it. We can actually eliminate the regulation itself on small business. Where I've had the problem is going back. And I have tried, and we have had bills in the Commerce Committee, and we've gotten them out of committee, and we've got them on the floor, but we haven't been able to go back and check every regulation before I passed that bill 5 years ago to see their impact on small business. But I will keep at it. I tend to be tenacious, and that's what I will continue to do, because I believe that small business is the backbone of our economy. I believe corporations don't need our help. They certainly are people in and of themselves. We have given them peoplehood. We don't throw them in jail when they do terrible things. And we look at our small businesses and we expect them to kind of just make it. So I'm a big proponent of our Small Business Express Fund. And I've helped a couple of small businesses in our district to get Small Business Express Funds. And I don't think that that's a wrong thing for us to do as the state of Connecticut. I would like to address what Nick said about liquor. Our tax on beer and wine is at the medium rate across all jurisdictions, all New England, all the country. The place where we put a bigger tax is on hard liquor, and we do. But I would challenge you, and remember, guys who took economics, the sin taxes, well, it's alcohol and it's tobacco. Those are referred to as sin taxes. And it's a place where we tend to put taxes to discourage consumption. Whether that works, as an economist, I say, yeah, I don't think so. But I would also tell you that the minimum bottle is to protect our mom and pop liquor stores. That's what it's there for. I shop all in Connecticut. If you go to Connecticut and then go over the border, I'm telling you, on the liters that they have in our smaller stores, you can do just fine. So I'm not sure why Nick wants to lower our alcohol tax or whatever. Thank you.
Okay, next question goes to you, Dana. This is about gun control. Connecticut requires a license to own any type of firearm and it requires a universal background check. But there's no waiting period in Connecticut. What that means is if the FBI is unable to do a background check within 3 days, the dealer may complete the transfer. 3 days is the federal government default time period for a background check. Should Connecticut enact its own waiting period? Is one question. Does Connecticut have enough gun control legislation, or does it have too much? What are your thoughts on gun control in general?
As far as the waiting period goes, we did institute a waiting period in instances of domestic violence. That was the bill that we did last session. So if you are in a domestic violence situation where you're going to take your gun away for a while, or if you want a gun, you're not going to get it. And I think that that makes perfect sense, because we know that in domestic violence situations, it can become out of control.
But otherwise, there is no waiting period.
I think that's a tough question. What has really shaped my perspective on gun control? First of all, I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment. I think you should be able to have a gun. I'm not sure that I want you to have an automatic weapon. And that comes from, and you can see this that I wear, this pink is for Sandy Hook. I was on that committee because I'm the chair of the Committee on Children. I listened to every one of those parents tell me what happened to their child. And I don't know if everybody knows, but when he changed his magazine, 4 kids jumped over their dead classmates and made it out. And when we talked about limiting the magazine, and we got a lot of pushback on that, I have a problem if you think that that's bad. Because in that instance, he couldn't change it fast enough to get those 4 little kids. And think of their future, think of what's in their little heads, jumping over their dead classmates to get out of there. So, as far as gun control, I think our gun laws in the state of Connecticut are pretty good. I think part of it is enforcing it. And I don't think that we're unreasonable. You need a license to drive a car. You need a license to do a lot of things. So when people get, I don't like this, I don't like you to do that, well, as I said, you need a license to drive a car. A gun kills people. I don't think it's a bad thing to say, well, you need a license, and you need to adhere to certain rules about the gun, but I'm not taking your guns away from you. I have no interest in them. And when people talk about the Second Amendment, I don't believe the Founding Fathers knew about automatic weapons.
Second question.
Sure. There is no waiting period in Connecticut to purchase a gun for a background check. What that means is if the FBI can't complete a background check within 3 days, the purchase can be completed. Should Connecticut institute its own waiting period? And based on what I read, the FBI says it could take up to 25 to 30 days to do a correct background check. But the federal default is a 3-day. Should Connecticut enact its own waiting period? Does Connecticut have enough gun control or too much? And what are your thoughts in general on gun control?
I'm happy with the Connecticut laws. I'm not happy with allowing any transfer of a weapon if the background check has not been done. I have a pistol permit, and I've had it since 1970. Okay, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I live in a very wooded area. I am totally surrounded my 2 acres by state forest. I do very little hunting except for the woodchucks that are in my garden. They're the major ones. I got 8 of them this year. Okay? They got more vegetables than you can believe. But in regard to I was watching the documentary the other night. I was shocked to hear the manufacturers of the ARs say when they put the thing on the market, they had no idea there was going to be any interest whatsoever. And all of a sudden, the interest was overwhelming, and the market for those guns was unbelievable. They upped production, and plus, also, other people got into the manufacturing of the brands. You pick up any gun magazine, and it's astronomical how many people are producing that weapon. And the purpose for the sales was the lack of security feeling by the residents. It wasn't to shoot the gun or to go out and see that they can chop down a tree or tear an automobile apart or anything like that. It was they didn't feel safe and they felt they needed an assault-type weapon to be secure. And that's a terrible feeling that our nation seems to have, and it's spread so that there's too many of those type weapons on the market and in the homes.
Okay, I just wanted to squeeze in one more, if that's okay. This is from a reader just the other day. And this would go to, who do we start with last time? You? This goes to Diana. Okay, this goes to Nick, this one starts with you. What is your position regarding the rise of Airbnb and similar in-home hospitality businesses, such as vacation rentals by owners? Should the state or the towns be regulating them for things such as health and fire and safety codes? Is this a state issue or is this a town issue?
I guess I would have to say the town, and I'm reluctant to say that. I don't want it to work. But I would imagine the local, we tax them, they're in our jurisdiction. I would assume that we would also make sure they're in compliance with health, welfare, and safety.
Okay. Good enough. Diana?
You know, the states basically are sovereign, and we promulgate the things that the towns can do, municipalities. So they zone incomes because the state gives you the power to zone. It's called Dillon's Rule. So in this instance, we have a new entity, these Airbnbs. It's almost, it's sort of a product of the internet and being able to talk with each other and figure out where these places are. And I definitely think that we need to have some structure around them. And whether it's the state that defines that structure and it goes down to the municipalities, or it's the municipalities ask the state for the power of what they want to do, I have to agree that it's the municipalities who have the boots on the ground, and they're the ones that are aware of what's going on in their communities. So in this instance, when we have this new idea of how we don't have hotels, we don't have motels, but you're taking somebody's home or you're staying in another part of somebody's home, yeah, we need to have some basic parameters for how that operates.
Thanks. This will be the last question. I just want to go back to the budget for a second. I want to start with Diana. I think it does start with Diana. Everyone talks about we need to cut the budget, we need to save money. And you've been there. You have 3 recommendations for consolidating departments, cutting departments, specific recommendations.
Yeah, results-based accountability, results-based accountability, and results-based accountability. And no, David, I'm not going to do it like that. I wrote a book, and there are a lot of colleges that are using this. It's one, who's driving the bus, one legislator's journey to accountability. And it talks about the children's report card. The Children's Committee has purview over $5.6 billion. That's what we spend on children and families in the state of Connecticut. We need to start to talk about whether programs are working, and that is critical. We have what is called a budget base, and I call it incremental budgeting. We have a base, nobody actually really knows what's in that base, and then we add on to it. That's why the budget continues to grow. We need to be able to say those programs that we passed 35 years ago, or the program that we passed 5 years ago, is it working? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Senator Bartolomeo and I passed a mental health bill after Sandy Hook. We brought together, going across agencies, to tackle the behavioral health problem, because a lot of people felt that we don't need to just focus on guns, we need to focus on mental and behavioral health. I agree. So when we brought that bill out, which brings every agency across silos together, we are the ones that are following it. We're the ones that are making sure that it's happening. And that's what needs to happen in state government. You can't just pass a bill and go home and say, sure hope that works, because that's what happens. you've got to know whether that program is working. So if you commit to taking a look at those programs, how much did you do, how well did you do it, and is anyone better off? And I need to know this with data. And as I said, www.ctkidsreportcard, and you'll be able to see what we do on the Children's Committee and how we track it. And I know you said three things, David.
You mentioned the programs that are 35 years old. You've
Yeah.
been there, you must have a couple in mind.
Well, let me think. If I think about, well, the Department of Children and Family, there are programs on teen pregnancy that go back, I'm just starting to take a look at those. Like $10 million on programs on teen pregnancy that have not moved the dial on teen pregnancy at all. So we're now drilling down into those programs that have been around forever. They're in New Britain, they're in Danbury, they're in New Haven and Hartford, and saying, wait a second, we're giving you this money, but we don't see a change in the teen pregnancy. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. Nick, instead of just saying we need to cut the budget, we need to save money, what would you, if elected, what recommendations would you have, specific recommendations?
I'm going to answer that a little differently. I spent a little while in the Navy, got exposed to military rule, where it's not a society, it's a dictatorship. And I worked at Electric Boat for 37 years. And at Electric Boat and in the military, things were pretty obvious what worked and what didn't work. And they were mutually changed, altered, revised, or eliminated. I think the government has a different attitude of if nobody's complaining about them, I guess there's nothing wrong. And there's a simple reporting in regard to your activities would give an indication whether you're getting your money's worth and whether or not there is an overlap with another board or commission or agency. And I just don't think that any of that exists in the state of Connecticut. And you know, I really think the employees want it. They don't want to sit idle around and do nothing. There's some, but you know, Connecticut workers are hard workers. They want to do a good day's work and they understand their responsibilities, okay? I don't begrudge them their job because they're under the fishbowl all the time. But I would think that a simple evaluation on an annual basis by the commissioner on I want to say a military or a cost effectiveness like Electric Boat does. I, on a couple occasions at Electric Boat, got to be a bean counter because I had a very big change. I had a couple of them that were just under 100 million, and a couple that were over 100 million. When I went into the area manager said, when you leave, I want to report what efficiencies or problems are there or anything like that. And you were required to report to them, and it was on a constructive basis in regard to what's wrong and how can we fix it. The meetings I used to go to, it wasn't what's wrong. If you had something was wrong, you had 15 seconds to identify what was wrong and 15 seconds to say how to fix it. Or they threw you out of the meeting and said, leave, don't come back, and send somebody who will support the program. I'm different too, and that's the way we did things in North Stonington, but that's a smaller area and we can have much better visibility. But that same thing can be applied on the large scale.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And now we're at the closing remarks. And we start with you, Nick. 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
I get the first one. Do I get any extra because I?
You got extra time.
Huh?
You got extra time on that one.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the basics. Okay. I want to be a representative. I don't think the state is working. I don't think it's cost effective. They're not willing to make the hard decision. I'm tired of hearing that's in the works, it's being worked, or yeah, we've known about that a long time. The latest thing after they cut all the people is they called the state, and the state said, we haven't got any stat, click, and say, call your town, okay? So the trickle down has already happened. 360 nuisance laws, okay? Then we go in and we say, we're gonna cut bus routes. what sense does that make? We're gonna cut tourism money. We're gonna cut business incubator unit down at Avery Point. That doesn't make sense if we're trying to grow things. We're not being proactive and we're not being sensible, okay? The business climate is terrible, we've gotta fix it. The state of Connecticut is broke. They don't have the money to fund things. The next legislature is gonna be difficult choices as to how much are they gonna cut from the states. You heard the comments I made about ECS. Listen to the comments about North Stonington's 40%, 47% for their building project. Stonington's getting 32, Ledger gets 62. The disparity is unexplainable, okay? And it's a shame, it's not systematic, much of it is political, and then you have to go fight for what is rightfully deservingly yours. And that's not the way it should work. I'm of the opinion that the state workers want to cooperate, they want to streamline, and half the time they're never asked what's going to be done, it's just done. I think including all the extra time?
You have 2 minutes, Barry.
I thought I had some extra time.
He was saying he got under 30 seconds because he didn't take his time.
It's up to you.
Oh, he didn't get it? He did
It's
get
up
it?
to you. You're in charge.
Yeah, you can finish up, finish up.
I'm of the opinion that the present Democratic leadership in the House and the Senate, and remember, the House and the Senate sets the budget, makes the laws, are entrenched in the old way. They're not going to change their way. They've got to be removed. And do I want to go to Hartford? No. I feel it's necessary to represent Stonington and North Stonington and make hard decisions, and I will go up there and do a good job. I don't care about the money or the license plates. I've got no interest in it, and I'm not going to spend any more time up there than I have to. But I will be loud, and, you know, I believe in the legislative agenda and the town meeting because we're successful in North Stonington, and we've got to even up the stakes up there so everybody will listen and tackle the hard questions. Otherwise, you're going to just continue, and you can mimic this same debate 2 years from now, 4 years from now.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you.
It's just not on the law.
I know.
How much time do I get, David?
10 minutes.
Oh, thank you.
She didn't throw the rock. Last opportunity.
All right.
2 minutes.
Unlike Nick, I want to be your state representative. I have made incredible progress in the state of Connecticut. You know, I show you my book. Please go to the Connecticut Kids Report Card and see what I've done. And as I said, I'm going to Ireland because the Irish Parliament is impressed with what I've done in Connecticut and wants to know if they can do it in Ireland. Do I want to be in the Irish Parliament? No. I want to be in the Connecticut legislature. It's the perfect position for me, protecting our children and our families, because our children are our future. People say that. Yeah, I believe it, and I mean it. And I know when I get that bill on the floor, I just need to get it on the floor, because once it's on the floor, people will not repudiate their children. But it's getting it out of committee. And it's one of the things that I learned when I received a fellowship to the Kennedy School. I was there, and I learned from Marty Linsky, who's one of the sort of incredible people in leadership. It's called getting to yes. We have people here, we have people here. You have to get to yes. And I came in as an economist thinking, I know this whole deal. I can show you how to do it. That's not how it works in the legislature. You need to get to yes. And by getting to yes, it means you have to collaborate, you have to build alliances, and you have to be able to articulate reasons why you're pushing people in the direction that you're pushing. When Nick says that we should run the state like North Stonington, well, North Stonington doesn't have a budget. If we're going to run the state like North Stonington's running the state, then we wouldn't have a budget in the state of Connecticut. I got $300,000 for North Stonington in August of 2015. They haven't finished writing out the paperwork. That's for the emergency services building. I can't protect that money if North Stonington can't get their act together to make sure that that paperwork's done. I've heard from him that I get everything for Stonington. Well, that's because Stonington has their ducks in a row. Working with the Stonington select people has been amazing. It's very easy for me to get everything and anything that they need because they have everything in order. And when I talk to them, it's done, and I'm able to get the reimbursements, I'm able to get their ECS back down to where it should be, I'm able to get Davis Standard done. So don't think that you want the state run like North Stonington.
Thank you. Thank you.